A recent study following thousands of people over decades revealed something shocking about human regret. When researchers asked people in their 70s and 80s about their biggest life disappointments, they discovered that 90% of regrets weren't about things people did wrong. They were about things people never did at all. The elderly don't lie awake at night thinking about the business they started that failed or the relationship that didn't work out. Instead, they're haunted by the business they never started, the person they never asked out, and the dreams they never pursued. They regret their inaction, not their action. Here's what makes this even more important for you right now. The same study found that these regrets cluster around three critical areas where people consistently choose safety over growth, comfort over courage. And here's the thing that should terrify you about waiting to address this. Every single day you delay taking action in these areas, you're making the exact same mistakes that lead to a lifetime of regret. You have something the elderly wish they could have back: time, the power to make different choices before it's too late. But that window is closing faster than you think. The decisions you make in your 20s and 30s don't just shape your 40s and 50s. They determine whether you'll spend your final decades proud of the life you built or haunted by the life you never lived. Today, I'm going to share the three areas where inaction destroys lives, based on decades of research into human regret. More importantly, I'll show you exactly what to do about each one while you still have the chance, because the elderly version of yourself is counting on the decisions you make today. When researchers dive deeper into what the elderly regret most, one theme dominates every study: relationships they let slip away. Not toxic relationships they should have ended, but meaningful connections they neglected while chasing other priorities. Robert Waldinger, who leads the Harvard study of adult development, has tracked the same group of people for over 80 years. His findings are clear. The quality of our relationships predicts our happiness and health better than any other factor. Yet most people discover this truth too late, after they've already sacrificed their closest connections on the altar of career advancement. The pattern is predictable and heartbreaking. In your 20s, you're building your career, so you skip the friend's wedding because of a work deadline. In your 30s, you're climbing the ladder, so you miss family gatherings because of important projects. By your 40s, you realize you've built a successful career, but lost touch with the people who once mattered most. Here's what the elderly wish they understood sooner. Relationships aren't just nice to have. They're the foundation that makes everything else meaningful. The most successful people aren't just professionally accomplished. They're surrounded by deep, lasting relationships that they've invested in consistently over decades. But here's the fear that stops most ambitious people from prioritizing relationships. They worry that investing time in people will slow down their professional progress. This is exactly backwards. Strong relationships accelerate your success in ways that working longer hours never could. The people in your network become your opportunities. The friends who truly know you become your advisors when you face difficult decisions. The family members you stay close to become your support system when challenges arise. When you invest in relationships, you're not taking time away from your success. You're building the foundation that makes sustainable success possible. The elderly, who avoided this regret, followed a simple principle. They treated relationship maintenance like any other important skill. They scheduled regular check-ins with friends. They prioritized family events, even when work was demanding. They understood that relationships require consistent investment, not just occasional attention when it's convenient. Start with one relationship that matters to you, but that you've been neglecting. Reach out today, not with a generic message, but with genuine interest in their life. Schedule time to connect regularly and protect that time like you would any important meeting. The compound effect of this simple habit will transform your life in ways you can't imagine yet. The loneliest people aren't those who failed at relationships. They're the ones who succeeded at everything else, but forgot to invest in the connections that give life meaning. Don't let career success become a consolation prize for a life lived alone. The second area where inaction haunts the elderly centers on risks they never took. But here's what surprised researchers. It's not the dramatic, life-changing risks that people regret avoiding. It's the calculated risks that could have transformed their lives gradually, safely, and sustainably. When psychologists study regret patterns, they find something counterintuitive. People don't regret the business that failed or the career change that didn't work out perfectly. They regret staying in jobs they hated for decades because they seemed safe. They regret never starting the side business because they were afraid of failure. They regret choosing predictable paths that led to predictable disappointment. Thomas Gilovich from Cornell University has spent decades studying the psychology of regret. His research reveals that we systematically overestimate the risks of actions while underestimating our ability to recover from setbacks. We imagine worst-case scenarios that rarely happen, while ignoring the slow-burning regret of never trying at all. The elderly understand something that younger people struggle to grasp. The biggest risk isn't failure. It's spending your entire life wondering what could have been. They've lived long enough to see that most failures are temporary setbacks, but the regret of an action compounds over decades. Here's the framework that the wisest elderly people wish they'd used earlier. Distinguish between intelligent risks and reckless gambles. Intelligent risks have limited downside, but unlimited upside. Starting a side business while keeping your day job. Taking a calculated career change when you have savings and a plan. Moving to a new city when you're young and adaptable. Reckless gambles, on the other hand, risk everything for uncertain reward. Quitting your job without savings to chase an untested ideas. Making major life changes based on emotion rather than planning. These aren't the risks the elderly regret avoiding. They regret avoiding the smart risks that could have gradually built better lives. The myth that keeps people stuck is believing you have unlimited time to take risks later. The elderly know this is false. Your risk-taking capacity actually decreases over time. In your 20s, you can recover from almost any setback. You have energy, fewer responsibilities, and decades to rebuild. In your 50s, the same setback might be devastating, but there's another element that makes early risk-taking so powerful. Small, consistent risks build your confidence for bigger opportunities. When you take intelligent risks and survive the inevitable setbacks, you develop resilience and judgment. You learn to distinguish between good risks and bad ones through experience, not theory. The people who avoid lifetime regret don't wait for perfect conditions to take risks. They understand that perfect conditions never come. Instead, they develop the skill of taking calculated risks regularly, building their tolerance for uncertainty while maintaining financial and emotional stability. Start by identifying one area of your life where you've been playing it too safe. Maybe it's a career move you've been considering, a creative project you've been postponing, or a lifestyle change you've been avoiding. Create a plan that limits your downside while preserving the upside. Then take action before you feel completely ready, because you never will. The elderly don't regret the risks that didn't work out perfectly. They regret the risks they never took because they were waiting for guarantees that never came. The third regret that haunts the elderly is perhaps the most painful: spending decades living according to others' expectations instead of their own values. They regret the careers they pursued to impress their parents, the relationships they maintained to avoid judgment, and the lifestyles they adopted to fit in rather than stand out. This isn't about dramatic rebellion or rejecting all social norms. It's about the quiet tragedy of people who spent so much energy being who they thought they should be that they never discovered who they actually were. They followed scripts written by others and woke up decades later feeling like strangers in their own lives. The energy cost of living inauthentically is enormous. When your actions don't align with your values, every day becomes an exhausting performance. You're constantly managing impressions, suppressing your true thoughts, and making decisions based on external approval rather than internal conviction. The elderly describe this as feeling like they were acting in a play they never auditioned for. Kristen Neff's research on authentic living shows that people who align their actions with their core values report higher life satisfaction, better relationships, and greater resilience during difficult times. But most people never take the time to identify what their authentic values actually are, distinct from what they've been told they should value. Here's a practical method for identifying your true desires. Pay attention to what energizes you versus what drains you. Notice when you feel most alive and engaged versus when you're going through the motions. Your authentic self isn't a mystery to be solved. It's already there, sending you signals through your emotional responses to different experiences. The fear that stops most people from living authentically is judgment from others. They worry about disappointing family members, losing friends, or being seen as selfish or irresponsible. But the elderly perspective reveals the flaw in this thinking. The people whose opinions you're protecting often care far less about your choices than you imagine. And the ones who do judge you harshly for living authentically probably aren't the people whose opinions should matter most. Living authentically doesn't mean ignoring all external considerations or being reckless with responsibilities. It means making conscious choices about when to conform and when to assert your individuality. It means being honest about what truly matters to you and making decisions that reflect those priorities, even when they're unconventional. The most powerful insight from elderly people who avoided this regret: authenticity attracts the right opportunities and people into your life. When you stop trying to be everything to everyone, you become magnetic to the people and situations that align with who you really are. Your energy shifts from managing impressions to creating value based on your genuine strengths and interests. The elderly version of yourself won't regret the judgment you faced for living authentically. They'll regret the decades you spent hiding your true self to avoid judgment. That probably never came. The research is clear. The biggest regrets aren't what you did wrong, but what you never did at all. Relationships you never invested in them. Risks you never took. An authentic life you never lived. Right now, identify one specific action you've been avoiding in any of these three areas. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you miss, taking that calculated risk you've been considering, or making a choice that reflects your true values instead of others' expectations. The elderly version of yourself is counting on what you decide today. You have something they'd give anything to have back. Time to act before it's too late. Your regret-free future starts with your next decision.